Hello, welcome back, and we're now in lesson 1.2, Graphing Quadratics in Vertex and in Intercept Form. Remember, back in lesson 1.1, we graphed quadratics in standard form. It's important to realize that in this lesson, we're going to break it up into 4 parts, and over the first 2 parts of this lesson, we'll have a quiz. And then over the last 2 parts of this lesson, we'll have a quiz. Part 1, we will graph a quadratic function in vertex form. Vertex form is this right here. Now, from vertex form, we can tell some things about the quadratic that will help us to graph it. For instance, we can look at the a value. And whatever the a value is, tells us is it an upward or a downward facing function. Also, we can determine its vertex. We can also determine the axis of symmetry. In addition to this data, we'll need to find 2 additional points so that we can graph. We'll pick smart values for our x that will produce good y values. Once we have these additional 2 values, we can use the reflections across the axis of symmetry. In part 2, we're going to graph a quadratic function in intercept form. Similarly, we'll be able to tell some stuff about this intercept form. We'll be able to look at the a value. Is it upward or is it a downward facing function? We'll also be able to tell where does this function cross the x-axis. These are the p and the q values. And from that, we'll be able to plot those points. These are called the x-intercepts. Also, we can determine the axis of symmetry because the axis of symmetry will be halfway between the p and the q, or the sum of the p and the q divided by 2. From that, we'll know the x value, and we can plug back into our function to find the y value to get the actual vertex. Part 3 and Part 4 are similar. We'll use our algebra skill set to transform intercept form into standard form, and then vertex form into standard form. We'll go back and we'll use a little bit of the FOIL, the distributive property, and we will transform those back into the forms that we need. It's important to note that lesson 1.1, which had 2 quizzes, and this lesson 1.2, which has 2 quizzes, that will be our basis for our first major assessment, Test 1. I'm excited about getting into this. We'll work through some examples, we'll do plenty of practice, and we'll move forward.